Hi all, we will begin shortly. All right, let's get started. Thank you so much for joining Time Management for CFP certification candidates, balancing work, life, and study. Let's get started. Our agenda for this webinar will begin with panelist introductions. We will then move to a facilitated discussion moderated by me. After our facilitated discussion, you will have the opportunity to ask any questions you might have. Please feel free to enter your questions in the Q&A box throughout the discussion. Finally, I will leave you with a few closing remarks. And as a reminder, this webinar will be recorded and posted on our YouTube channel within about a week. I am so excited to introduce you to our three wonderful panelists for today's discussion. We have Ryan Kleiss, Financial Advisor at Edward Jones, Stephanie Baity, Financial Advisor at Alliance Financial, and Igor Aronov, Founder and Financial Planner at FAR Financial. These three have invaluable insight to share with the candidates that will help you as you work through the certification process. So I would just love a brief introduction from you three. Ryan, why don't you start us out?
Thank you, Grace, and appreciate the introduction. I'm Ryan Kleiss. I've been in the financial service industry for a little over 20 years in various roles. I've been at my current firm for about 15 years and just really enjoy giving back to my local community and helping our CFP community grow better, become stronger, and help more people work on their financial goals.
Thank you. Stephanie?
Sure, thanks, Grace. I'm Stephanie Baity. Like Ryan, have been in the industry just over 20 years. The first half was in portfolio management more so, and then the second half in financial planning. I'm a mom, have two kids. I'm really involved in the community and church, and really just enjoy getting to talk to people and talk about CFP.
Amazing. Thank you. You're a superwoman. Igor, how about you?
Hi, everybody. Thanks, Grace. Happy to be here. I'm slightly different from from Ryan and Stephanie. I'm a career changer. I come from being a small business owner, co-running a design and development studio, and now I have my own small RIA, solo RIA. Uh, yeah, I have three kids, a dog, and a wife, and happy to be here. Happy to help.
Amazing. Thank you guys so much. So we can get going on the facilitated discussion led by me. So my first question for all of you, and I'll call on you individually, is can you briefly share a little bit about your CFP certification journey and what made time management especially challenging for you? And I am going to start with Stephanie, if that's all right.
Sure, yeah. Um, I feel like my journey took a little bit longer than the average. It was about a year and a half from start to finish. As far as what made it challenging, it's one, we had a big change at work. So my boss had sold the firm to somebody else, which it was a great change. It was just maybe not timed the best for me. So that was just a lot of paperwork and a lot of meeting with clients, talking to them, reassuring them. Um, Really just I was working full time, so that takes time. Of course, I had the two kids and I was a single mom at the time, so that added a little bit of pressure there. And then I think Ryan might be in the same boat here if I remember his messages, but I took it during the height of COVID. And so that was I would not choose to do that again. There was some positives, but definitely a time of uncertainty. You would gear up and be ready to take your exam, and then they canceled it. So definitely, those were probably the biggest challenges with my just the journey itself.
Great. Thank you so much. Igor, how about you?
Well, my whole journey took about 2 years, and again, not being from the industry, I had to satisfy all the experience requirements. And I guess the most challenging part was that I was continue while doing the education part of the requirement. I was still working full time and studying in the evenings, and it was I had to constantly switch gears from doing the other work to learning all about financial planning. So yeah, that was probably the biggest one. And just satisfying the education requirement, especially, experience requirements, especially starting this journey seemed like something unattainable. But yeah, here I am. It can be done.
Amazing. I love to hear it. Ryan, how about you?
Stephanie is spot on. I took mine in March of 2020, and what a lovely time that was, obviously. I think the hard part was we were making a shift in my office. We were changing locations, we were adding new staff, and we were changing the CRM structure. So the work-life balance was different when you're trying to learn new systems. And I think the difficulty was, yeah, you can schedule a couple days, but for me, the journey was similar to that. It was probably about a year to really study to get it figured out because I finished the CHFC and CLU years ago and I was rusty on studying. So I think trying to get into that study mode over that time period was just rough because you have so many different things that you're trying to balance. And it was doable, but it took some focus.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. My next question is, how do you build a realistic study schedule around work and other personal commitments? And I'm going to start with Igor.
Well, so the education part, as I said, was doable, relatively easy because I knew that I was dedicating time in the evenings. When I started getting ready for the exam, I had to pretty much abandon all my personal commitments. It happened to be my wife's birthday during the that window, and I had to miss it. Everybody was having fun. I wasn't. I had a mentor through the board, and he said one thing that kind of landed with me was that you want to do it once. You don't want to keep on studying and do it more than once. So I decided, yeah, I'm gonna miss some things, and but I'm gonna dedicate all my time. And I did it through a BIF review program, and they were very structured in terms of like this week you study this, next week you study this. So that was really helpful for me.
That's really good to hear. I haven't heard much about Biff, so it's exciting to hear that perspective. Ryan, what about you?
So for me, I knew I had to figure out a time when I was going to have the most free time. So outside of work. So I forgot first got my support system set up with my wife and my family. And so I knew that studying from October to March was the best time for me to study. I signed up for a review program and we just essentially made it where Tuesday, Thursdays were my late evenings. And then Monday through Friday were when I could do my test questions studying. And then Saturday mornings was the only time in which I could do any other reviewing. Any other time was dedicated family time or church time. And so by having that split, it gave my family the time they needed. I still missed some stuff. I missed some birthdays. I missed some weddings, but it was more manageable and it gave my support system time to help me feel like I had the support I needed, but also at the same time I could spend time with my family. And I think when you can segment that time and use time blocking efficiently, it makes it makes it very efficient.
Absolutely. Thanks so much. Stephanie, what about you?
Excuse me. Yeah, very similar. Excuse me. I used Kaplan for my education piece and then Dalton for the review. And they do have a schedule. So you put in your date that you want to take the exam or that your goal is, and then they come up with a calendar. But for me, really, I think the biggest advice is just you have to know yourself and not overextend. Because if you overextend and you're unrealistic, you're setting yourself up to fail without question. I'm a morning person, so I knew that most of my like free time was going to have to be before the kids got up for school or whatever. And I know that, I could say, yes, I'm going to study from 8 to 10. I'm not because 9:30 I am in bed and I knew that it would not even be helpful to try to schedule at night. So really just being realistic, setting yourself up, knowing your schedule, and then not rushing the process because I think for the most part at the beginning of the studying, it's not as chaotic, really. You have a little bit more downtime and then it ramps up towards the end. So just kind of expect that going in. And really just, again, just be realistic, know your schedule, know what's going to work for you best.
Yeah. Thank you so much. My next question is, what is one mistake candidates commonly make when creating a study plan? And I'm going to start with Ryan.
I think what Stephanie just said was spot on. The ramp up at the end is the hard part. because you cram all this stuff in, you're learning it, 100+ different topics, and you have to realize this is a test that, not only do you have to know the material, but then you have application of it during the exam window. So I think the big mistake people make is that they pay too much attention maybe to one category of material, and then they overlook a part. They spend so much time on insurance because maybe they're not strong there, but then they don't look at tax and retirement planning or the process of the CFP process for actually, getting to know the client and discovery and things like that. So I think they don't spread it out enough how they study for the exam. And I think towards the end, then they're trying to learn it. And as we all know, if you don't know it the day before the exam, cramming to try to get it the day of the exam is going to be a little hard. So I think, again, that giving yourself enough time to study, if you know you need 9 months, there's nothing wrong with taking 9 months. If you know you need 6, take 6. Don't try to do it all in a short period just so that way you can get it done. Because like the other panelists said, if you can get it done in one try, that's much better than have to go back and do it all over again.
Right, right. Absolutely. Thanks so much. Igor, how about you?
Yeah, I totally agree with Stephanie that you really need to know yourself, what works for you. I think it's essential. I decided that I was gonna be a robot and just study all day long. I was lucky enough to not to be able to work at that time. But in terms of mistakes, I've seen people uh, thinking, okay, I'm gonna skip today. I have like this event that I have to attend, and I'm gonna catch up on the weekend. That never works. It's things pile up very quickly. As Ryan and Stephanie said, it starts ramping up very, very fast and intensely. So yeah, try to, if you have a program, stick with it and don't try to deviate from it.
Absolutely. Thank you. And Stephanie, did you answer this already? I'm getting mixed up.
I didn't. It's okay. But
Okay.
really just what both of them said. It's kind of like when people start, workout plan in January and they have all these great plans and expectations
Right.
and then it fails. You really have to just say, okay, what's realistic? And like Ryan said, I think it was Ryan, if it's going to be 9 months, it's going to be 9 months. If, whatever it is for you, definitely don't compare yourself to others if you're doing it in a groupie because everybody's schedule is so different and everybody learns differently. And like they said, you don't want to wait till the end and cram everything. So one mistake I've seen people make again and again is they focus because it makes them feel good. They focus on the areas they already know. Huge mistake. You already know it. And so really you have to say, okay, I need to know a lot about all of these areas. So just break it up. Break it up with the study schedule that your provider makes up or whatever works for you, but just stick to it. If you get behind, which there will be times that happens, don't panic. Just start back up. The worst thing you can do is panic and then get 2 weeks behind, and then catching up is going to be extremely difficult.
Right. Absolutely. Thanks, guys. My next question is, and I get this one a lot when I'm talking to candidates, is what were early signs of burnout for you and how did you respond? And I'm going to start with Ryan.
I realized I was burnt out probably in the first 2 months of studying because I realized I had tried to get ahead of the schedule in which I had. Like Stephanie had said and Igor had said, if you have a platform, use that platform. And if you get a week behind, that's fine, but get back on track. And my problem is I try to get so far ahead. And then I was like, okay, I got a lot of this down. Well, the problem is then I had burnout because I was going through similar questions. I bought another study bank, another 1,000 questions to have on top of the other 1,000 I already had. And the burnout came when, like, about a week in, probably the third month, I was just thinking I couldn't do it anymore. And I still had 3 more months to go. So I think the big thing, though, too, is while I had realistic expectations, I was trying to do too much all at once. So I redid the schedule and just made it to where those 5 days a week that I studied for 2 or 3 hours a night were it, and then Saturday mornings. And I just stuck to it. And if I feel like there was a subject matter, like Stephanie said, I was strong at, I tried not to focus on it so much because the problem is if you're comfortable, you don't want to get out of that area. Well, this exam makes you uncomfortable. So you have to focus on those areas where you can move and focus on areas where it's harder material that you might not know. You might be really good at insurance, but estates or something might be your kryptonite. So then you gotta go that direction. And that's where I started to spend those questions that I did. I tried to do 100 to 200 a day, and I just kept that that same pattern for the 6 days a week, and it eventually worked out. But the burnout did happen about 3 months in, because I was trying to spend all those hours just getting ahead when I should have just been sticking to the plan.
Right. And how did you remedy that?
Well, like I said, the big thing was sitting back down and looking at my time blocks and saying, okay, I am sticking to my time blocks, but now
Right.
those things where it's supposed to be extra free time to do something else, my wife wanted to go out and visit her family. Well, I spent a weekend, we didn't go because I was like, I need the extra time that other Saturday.
Right.
And so, I had to remedy that and come back to the drawing board and say, okay, these are the main subject areas I need to cover. I went from covering everything to the main areas that I was struggling with, and I started to break those down more. So it freed up a little bit of my time, but at the same time, it was able to give me flexibility to go back to my own time blocks and just use those effectively instead of trying to get ahead. Now, later on, when you get to that final month or so to study, I felt good because I had spent so much time ahead, but I also was just burnt out from studying and just really anxious to take the exam and be done with it.
Right. Absolutely. Thank you so much for your insight. Igor, how about you?
Well, at some points I felt that my head is a cup of water that's filled up to the brim and no information was entering it. So I strategically chose to take the exam when it was November exam, so I knew I could spend time outside uh, during preparing. So I would go and just like listen to a podcast on, I guess, on a related subject, like Choose FI podcast. So it was something on financial planning, but not exactly that preparation for exam things. Yeah, stepping outside is a must. Was a must for me.
Awesome. Stephanie, how about you?
Yeah, similar. I don't know exactly when it hit. It was probably several times, but I would always know that I was getting to that point because nothing would stick in my head. I was not retaining anything. And then my test scores or quiz scores would start going down instead of up. And so on those times, I just took a day off. I would read something fun because during, prep for this exam, I didn't really read for fun and I love to read. I would go for a run because I absolutely love to run and just take a day and not think about it at all. I did not listen to a podcast. I didn't do anything having anything to do with the CFP. And then it usually was after that day, I could come back and be like, okay, look at it with fresh
Yeah.
eyes.
Absolutely. Very helpful. Thanks, guys. My next question is, what advice would you give candidates who feel behind or overwhelmed right now? I'm going to start with Igor.
That's a tough one. Well, I guess the biggest advice is that you can totally do it. It can be done. You just need to really think positively. You need to prepare. Well, I do have a great recommendation that really helped me. Somebody during my one of my study groups recommended looking into something called active recall, and that technique totally kind of put me on to the next level because I couldn't. It was very hard to retain all the information, just memorizing it, and active recall was a deal breaker for me. So yeah,
Absolutely.
just look it up on YouTube. There are plenty of videos. That was very helpful.
Thank you. Ryan, what about you?
I think it goes back to what Stephanie said. You kind of have to know what's best for you. Like, for instance, I like to run, was a long distance runner for a long time. And just because you're running a marathon and someone's in front of you doesn't mean you have to run to try to catch up to them. So go at your own pace, right? And the other big thing is too, sometimes when you run marathons, you're going to have a pacer or somebody that runs alongside you. Get a mentor early. Find someone that has passed the exam or other exams that you're interested in. If they're at a level that you want to be at in your career or you admire their process, go reach out to them first, because I feel like that gives such insight into how they can help you study for this exam. And the big thing I often tell people when I mentor them is, for this exam in particular, knowledge and application come together in this exam. 200 plus 300 hours of studying, you're going to have to know in that case study how to put it together. And remember, you're not thinking about how you would think about it, but how the board wants you to have the application set for the exam. So the more you can not only find a mentor and study that way, just because you're behind, it doesn't mean you'll stay that way. But again, go at your own pace. You can catch up. It is doable. It is manageable. But having somebody that's been there can help take some of the shoulders off you, and they can help you get across the CFP finish line.
Amazing. And a shameless plug because I am the mentor program administrator. We have a wonderful program. So if you're interested, I think it's just mentor at cfp.net. So check that out. And then Stephanie, what about you?
Yeah, a lot of the same. Do not rush the process. First of all, everybody will get overwhelmed at some point during this exam. It's an overwhelming exam. Be realistic. This is for the perfectionist type A's out there. You're not going to score 100. You're not going to do it. And you're also not going to know what grade you got. So that's going to bother some people. But you just have to know that, okay, this is an overwhelming exam. It's a lot to prepare for, but you absolutely can do it. And I completely agree with either the mentor or joining a study group, as long as you're not comparing yourself to them. Um, but you may never feel ready. And that's not to be a negative, it's actually a positive. Again, I used Dalton. They have a readiness exam, and I bombed it bad, bad, bad. And if I'd panicked and I had said, okay, I'm not ready, I'm not going to take this exam, um, I wouldn't have taken it. But instead, I was like, okay, I still have time. It wasn't great, but I still had time. And I did pass on the first try. So it absolutely can happen. You just have to stay calm. You have to just take a step back, look at the basics. I used the quick sheets a lot. They were a saving grace for me because if you're having a rough day, if you just want to look at it and say, okay, what's the big picture? Because Ryan's right. There is so much information, but you need to know big picture and some of the small stuff. But if you just dive in and try to memorize like every little piece, you're going to get overwhelmed. So you need to just say, okay, how does the CFP board want me to answer this question? And really just focus on that. Focus on, okay, I can do this. This is my plan. It's not going to go perfectly, but I can get there.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And then I have one last question, and we have a ton of Q&A from the audience, so we will get to that. But my last question is, looking back, what would you do differently when it comes to managing your time during CFP exam prep? I'm going to start with Igor.
I was lucky enough to be able to kind of stop working and dedicate myself fully to studying. So I'm not sure if there is anything I would change from what I've done. Yeah, just give yourself grace and think that you can do it and be just yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you. Ryan, what about you?
Absolutely give yourself grace for this exam. I think the first thing would be I wouldn't have tried to jump ahead of the plan thing I had with my reviewer, just because I would have if I just would have stayed on track, it would have been a little bit easier to manage because even if you get ahead, sometimes you got to go back and it's not fun. And then the second thing, I probably would have made sure that any outside activities that you have, whether it's on a board or an alumni commitment or whatever you're doing, make sure that they're also aware of it because sometimes you can always say yes to so many things or no to so many things when in a day, and on some stuff your social calendar can become very full. And as Stephanie said, one of the best things to do is just take a day off, read a book you enjoy that has nothing to do with financial planning, or in my case, watch a Cardinal game or a football game, and you need to relax. So taking that extra time is hugely important. I wish that some of those Saturday mornings when I did that, I had maybe taken a little bit more time to golf or have done something else instead of necessarily just sticking to that time block to study. But give yourself a little bit of breathability into the schedule because you only have so much time to spend with family and everything else, and you have so many commitments that the CFP doesn't need to become your life, but it can become a part that helps you in your career for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you. Stephanie, what about you?
Yeah, I would say if I had it to do over again, I would focus more on the overview from the start and not get in the weeds because there's so much that you tend to get in the weeds right away. And just realize like, okay, I really need to know the overview of the process first. Do not study the night before. It was pointless. It made no sense. And then learn at the beginning. This one was huge. That when you're answering the practice questions or the practice test, you really want to look at the question and say, okay, why did I get this right? Or why did I get it wrong? And figure out why that answer was, either right or wrong. How does the CFP look at it? How do they want you to answer it? Because so many times you'll be like, oh, I got this right. I don't have to worry about it. But if you really read through the other options, you learn why they're wrong. And it does take more time, but it's much, much more effective to me anyway, to do that rather than just pound through hundreds and then thousands of questions and either one, memorize them, which I did see people do, or two, you might learn it, but you're not really understanding exactly what the board is trying to say. Again, don't compare yourself to anyone. That's a big thing that I saw quite often because it could cause panic. You're like, oh, they're so far ahead, or it doesn't matter. And then one thing that I think I did do right, and I do recommend, is when you're practicing for the test, so this is when you're doing like the actual practice exams, I say do everything the same as you will the day of the test. And at least that worked for me. For me, it was same time of day, take that break, even though it's tempting to not. Um, Oh, I even like ate the same thing, that I was going to eat that day just in case. And then for me, it meant doing practice exams, and I did three with a mask on, which was terrible. But I knew that I had to use a mask the day of the exam. And if I hadn't practiced that, it would have messed with my head for sure. So definitely practice. But yeah, everything else I think is just, everybody will make small mistakes. You'll learn from them and just keep going.
Amazing. This is so inspirational. I love hearing about y'all's perspective. So thank you so much. And we have so many questions, so we will jump right into this. Feel free to jump in and answer whenever y'all feel like you would like to. One question for me is if this is being recorded, and yes, this will be recorded. You will get an email within the next few days with a recording, with the slides and everything. And then it will also be posted on our YouTube within a week, but probably shorter. So our first question is, did you ever feel overwhelmed when studying for the CFP exam? It's so much material, especially for career changers. Any words of advice or encouragement? Take it, Ryan.
Absolutely. I think, and just keep staying in my mind with what Stephanie said, is there's going to be parts that you just don't want to study because you feel you don't know it. And I think for me, that was the estate portion and all that, because I had always been in the retirement space. And so, make sure you knew your beneficiaries, and like, that's as far as it went. Right. And so when I got burnt out, and I knew I kind of knew a good chunk of stuff across the things I felt very comfortable, I think I just really focused a lot on estates. And now come to find out in my practice now, that's one of our biggest areas of strength. Right. And so I think the big thing is just come up with a way that you can test yourself with that. When you get burnt out, if there's something that you're struggling with, one big thing is know how you study, right? Igor said, play to your strengths. I agree with that. So if you're more audio, maybe listen to a podcast while you work out or go for a walk. If you're more visual, like me, I like to see a professor talk about it, and then I can go back and rewind it and go back through that definition over and over, or that application over and over again, because then it's not so overwhelming. You're following somebody else's process that can help you learn the process for yourself. And I think that to me was a big thing. And then again, I go back to getting a mentor early, because when you're burnt out, you can send them a call, give them a call or send them an email and say, hey, here's what I'm struggling with. Okay, let's break that down, right? 300 hours for the CFP exam sounds like a lot, but 5 hours here, 10 hours there, it starts to break that down a lot, right? And I think that's the big thing. You don't have to do it all at once, but a little bit at a time goes a long way.
Absolutely.
I feel like having a
Um,
study group that was mentioned already, manageable study group, not too large, was very helpful. Just supporting each other and asking questions that you feel completely you have no answer for. Somebody will always have an answer. So that was very helpful.
also have the candidate forum, which is a really good place for candidates to talk to one another about specific challenges they're having, what coursework they're taking. So that's another resource I would highly recommend you checking out. And I think this question is for Igor. What is your advice to career changers for folks from unrelated fields like tech? Also, how do you make up the required hours when you're a career changer?
Uh, I guess one of the better advices that I got on CFP forums was from gentleman John Ray. I don't know how to pronounce. He said the first thing you do, join your local FPA chapter. I think that, and I'm very happy I did. Uh, so for as far as experience, there are plenty of programs right now that are available too. It's too much to talk about here. Happy to connect offline and go through it. And actually, FPA just launched this year a Career Changers Committee. that will be specifically talking to, and I happen to be a part of it, that will be specifically having programs for career changers and dedicating time to answer all these questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Someone says, the program I have does not appear to have a set schedule I can follow, and I find I really need one to make sure I'm keeping to the study schedule. What advice would you give for creating your own study schedule that is realistic to a work-life balance? And anyone can take this.
Think this one's a little bit hard for me to answer only because I had Dalton, and so they made the schedule for me. Otherwise, it would be a matter of saying, okay, if whatever books you're using, whatever study or area you're using, to say these are the areas I need to cover. This is when I want to take the exam and work your way back. And some areas are going to take you longer, and then some are going to take you less time. It's all dependent on what you already know or what comes easier to you. But I would say, just like really studying for any exam, truthfully, or even planning anything, start with, okay, this is the end date. This is where I'm at. This is what I need to cover, and like break it into manageable chunks.
Absolutely. Thank you. Ryan, I believe this question is for you since you are a CHFC. Someone says, I expect to finish the CHFC next week. Is it realistic to take the March CFP exam?
Uh, that is a loaded question. It depends on how much you retain from the CHFC. I had like a 2 year window between mine, so I was rusty. That might be, but I would probably give yourself some more time, just because not only do you have to go about a different learning way, but the application, again, difference between the exams that you have for CHFC in each chapter and even the capstone are very different than the CFP itself. And I'm sure my fellow panelists would agree with me that when you put it all into one exam, that's the scary part. And so I would say maybe give yourself a little bit more time in my recommendation. Reach out to me offline if that helps too. And I mean, I think the big thing is that you want to make sure that you are ready for the format of the exam as well. Because again, the CFP board is going to look at it as one type of answer, and then you look at it, no matter how many years of experience you have, you say, well, in my example, that makes sense. Then you pick yours. That's not the way CFP board would have thought about it. And the CFP board wants to challenge you because we want to make sure that we're putting the client first in those scenarios. So that way, when you see the reasoning, like Stephanie said, why is this answer wrong versus this answer being right? It helps you learn that properly, and giving yourself that extra time to study for it and learn the format. I would highly recommend taking the CFP practice exam that's on the website, because then you have an idea how what you're going to do. And that way it gives you an idea, and that might be the thing to do, is to see how much the information you've retained from CHFC. But I would not probably be going from just now in February to the March exam just to get it done, because like they said, you want to do it once. Doing it again is not fun. And I've had some colleagues and people I've mentored that were on their fourth or fifth time, and the nervousness is ramped up, and it's just not fun to go through.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. This is a question for Stephanie specifically. Stephanie mentioned a tool to build yourself a study schedule based on when you're planning to take the exam. Where is that tool located?
Okay, yeah. So that tool was through Dalton. So I chose Dalton. I think Kaplan has it too, but Dalton was my review provider, and they had it on their website. So while there may be other ones, that's the one that I used.
Thank you. This is a question for all three of you. Do you have any podcasts that you would recommend while you're studying for the CFP exam?
I actually listened to Biff, even though I didn't go through that provider. It was fantastic.
Yeah, Biff Byte definitely is great.
There's a lot that you can probably get on the CFP board forum. That would be my recommendation on places to search, because again, depending on how in the weeds they want to get, I listened to so many different ones 5 years ago that they might not even be around anymore. But I would recommend, like what my other two panelists here said, that you've got some good direction. And I think the forum could also find it for you. I know I used them, but I couldn't think of one off the top of my head.
Absolutely. The next question is, what are some tips to maintain that mental toughness to sit through the 6 hours for the actual test?
Grace,
I
you can go
can say
ahead.
that it was recommended in my review just to take each question as its own thing. Uh, take a few box breathing, four in, four out, and yeah, just approach each question as its own thing. Just don't try to think that okay, this is the next one and this is the next one, and just try to clear your mind before each question.
Go ahead, Stephanie.
Yeah, I would say similar. Like, I mean, everybody has to know how they test. So for me, like when I went into the test, I knew that I was going to do case study first. That worked for me. That way I could get it out of the way. I had practiced that way. And then I would hit all the others because I'm like, okay, the case study for me took longer. I didn't find it more difficult, it just took longer. And so overall, I would just say practice. I think I was lucky because we were given two practice exams, and I think that was because of COVID and they canceled our thing. And then I had one, of course, through Dalton, and really just practice how you're going to do it the day of. Have a plan going in, like whether it's, take this first or another thing I did that I think they talk about a lot is mark the questions that you aren't sure of and then come back to them. Do not waste time on them because that'll just mess with your mind. And I have learned early on in series exams and all of that, do not change an answer unless you are 100% sure it is incorrect. Um, it usually is not going to be for the better. So I think those are the main things that, helped me.
I think for me, it was two things. Number one, a week or two before, this is winter we're talking about, I went and drove to the testing center two or three times because I'm just 30 minutes away. I wanted to see what the traffic was like, didn't want to be late. So that after knowing what it was going to look like, it calmed my anxiety down because I didn't want to have to be driving, trying to make sure I was going to make the time. And number two, I think testing the environment is very important. So for me, I wore the mask for two separate practice exams. I was in a room that was in my office that had no sound or anything, so that way I couldn't be distracted. And that was a big deal for me because I was able to just essentially do the same environment, have the same environment as I was studying for it. And then number two, I think Stephanie is absolutely right in the case study. I had a nightmare scenario where I had too many case studies. And the one thing I will say about the case studies, they're not harder, they're not more overwhelming. But there's two things I would recommend. Number one, read it, jot down some things on the sheet that they give you that you think may be important, because sometimes it might be subsets of questions on that they come back to from the other questions. And then the thing is, sometimes there's little notes at the end of the case study that you have to pay attention to that weren't in the big paragraph, maybe about the family or a vacation home they wanted to buy. Pay attention to that because it could be a part that comes from a tax question, or it could be a part that comes from, another big part of their goal that they want to do. So just those little things in the case study, because I went back and I changed three answers because I didn't pay attention to that little area, and I had to redo my equation. So she's absolutely right, though. Don't change your answers unless you know for sure that you're going to be right. I didn't get my test back, but I think I got those three right.
Thanks so much. That's great advice, guys. We just have so many questions for y'all. Y'all are killing it. Someone says, how did you manage your schedules when completing the education requirement while also working? Also, how did you communicate to your work, family, peers who are not familiar with CFP, explaining your lack of presence in social gatherings? That's a good question.
I can go first. I know that the education piece for me was just a lot easier, and it was kind of just like any other class, So I had the time from here to here, and that's when I was going to take it. And even the what capstone that was, I knew exactly what that was going to look like. As far as work, they knew I was working on it, but I really did not at the beginning, particularly. I did not take time out of work to study. I just didn't have time to do that. Sometimes I would work on it over lunch. My kids were younger at the time, so to them, they just knew I was studying. But they had been through it before with the series exams, like they were used to that. Um, I think over one good thing is there were no social events because it was COVID. So that did help. I didn't have any, fear of missing out there. Um, yeah, it's just communicate. I mean, that's pretty much always the answer. Let them know what's going on. And then you kind of just make decisions from there.
I would agree with that. And I don't think fear of missing out really existed until like 2022. So I think the big thing for me was the consideration that I had taken at that point, I had 7 or 8 designations. So like my family knew that I liked to learn and it was going to be part of the process. So I think the big thing was just recommunicating why this is important for 3 things. Number one, it's important for my development as a financial professional. Number two, it helps me help my clients. And number three, this is going to be the biggest one. And this is going to take time, but it'll be time well invested. And that helps all 3 of those categories. So just communicate it to my colleagues, especially my mentors here at the firm and a couple former colleagues that had passed it previously, and just make sure I had their buy-in that, maybe there weren't going to be some joint meetings I was going to be in unless they absolutely needed me because I need to get this done on the time that I had blocked at the office and personal.
Right.
Well, I was taking my exam in 2023, so distractions were aplenty. Uh, but I told myself, told everybody that this is what I'm doing. Uh, we planned ahead not to schedule anything important. Uh, and yeah, also one of the things that I remembered, definitely allow time for self-care. Like don't skip gym, go do some exercise because yeah, it's essential to keep that afloat, to keep yourself afloat.
Absolutely. That's one thing I hear from panelists always is that you need to take time for yourself as well, which I know is hard because this is a very intense process. Our next question is, how do you manage life with family and kids during the last intense months before the exam? And how many hours per day were you studying at that point?
Um, okay, so the kids, some of it depends on their age. Some of them will understand a little bit better if they're older. Mine were 5 and 10 at the time. As far as how intense I would say 2 months before it started to get a little bit more intense, and then I would take some weekend time and they just knew. That would be a time that my kids did probably watch more TV and stuff like that. Um, and then 2 weeks before, and this won't work for everybody, but my work did give me time to study. So I took a half a day every day for 2 weeks. And that was my study time. And then, I would have maybe an hour in the morning still, but it did make it an awful lot easier when I had that time.
Yeah, I was lucky to have older kids, so they understood what needed to be done, and yeah, a lot of takeouts.
Awesome.
For me, I didn't have any kids at the time, but we were newly married, so it was kind of balancing out, moving and everything. But I think the big thing towards the end was my hours that I started studying decreased, but my number of questions every day, I usually would do 100 to 200. The last 6 weeks, it was going over each day I picked a separate part of the exam and I studied that specifically on that day. And then that day I also took random questions, about 200 to 300 a day. And that it freed me up because now stuff was starting to get there and the application was starting to stick with me. But the last 6 weeks, I mean, I probably only studied about 2 hours a day at most, just because I didn't want to feel overwhelmed by it. But I think Stephanie's right though. The last 2 months is a lot more intense because now you know it. Now it's application time. And I did, like I said, I did 2 whole exams that were just, I tried to simulate it as best as possible. And that got my nerves down a lot. And I think, again, just figuring out your time commitments and figuring out ways to make that work is the best thing you can do.
Absolutely. We had a question about the mentor program, just the email and the website. So it's cfp.net/mentor, and then the email is mentor@cfp.org. And I will send this in the follow-up email, so don't worry about that. Let's see, we have more questions. Okay, someone says, how soon should you take the review before the exam?
I actually took a break between the education and review was kind of finished at the end of October, and the exam was on November 7th. So yeah, right before it.
Mine was a 4 month period. I had 2 months in that 6 month period where I just kind of refreshed myself on some stuff. And then the folks I used, they're no longer in business, unfortunately. But they had a schedule where they made that at the 4 month mark, and that was my review process. I think for maybe some people that's a little too long, but for me it was good because again, I fast forwarded through so much those first 3 months, and then I was able to kind of span it out the last three that it made it a lot easier. And I'd say maybe 3 to 4 months at the most, or maybe, but again, like we said earlier, you need as much time as you think you're going to need.
Right.
Yeah, I actually was trying to think back. I cannot remember how long there was between the official end of the program and the test because, and again, this could have changed because this was 2020, but at the time, Dalton let you have access to the material until your exam. So I feel like I was able to go back and watch the videos and do all that and practice the questions up until the exam.
Stephanie, this is a question for you. They say, "Hi, Stephanie, thank you for all of your insight. Through Dalton's review program, did you purchase additional question banks? What did you find most helpful going through that portion prior to taking the exam?"
Yeah, through Dalton, I didn't, the whatever thing I bought had all the questions in it. I did not purchase additional question banks. I think I might be a strange one though, and did not do as many questions as, everybody, but it has thousands in there. I don't even remember how many they have. Um, One thing I did purchase additionally, and I saw this question on here was the quick sheets. That is a Dalton product. I'm sure others have it. A huge recommendation on that. That to me, that was just so important of showing like, here's the big picture. And then I also did purchase the audio, but I think that the questions came with it.
Um, Someone says, I love the idea of a study group, but I'm wondering how I have a full-time job, live classes 2 times a week, plus studying and prepping each week. How feasible is a study group and taking yet even more time when I already feel a lack of time to do it all?
I think it's manageable. So I've noticed on the forum in the last month, there's been a lot of them that are getting together in certain geographical areas and also doing it virtually. So it's very manageable. You don't have to attend everything, but sometimes maybe in that group, you'll meet someone that's struggling with the same thing as you are, and you can take a little bit more time meeting with that person outside the group to focus on those areas. And I think it's very manageable. Again, shout out to the forums. I feel like that's a big thing because then you can find people who are, again, like I said, maybe geographically close to you, or maybe you can find a subject matter specialist, but that can go a long way in helping you study for it, because you don't have to devote your entire time to study group, but a little bit of that, like Igor said, maybe not a big group, but a small group can go a long way.
And I agree with that. Mine was through the website as well. That Ryan was talking about um, I did not ever, I don't even know that we had sit down virtual events. We certainly didn't have in person study sessions. It was more of this small group that we got together, asked each other questions. If there was an area we were struggling with, I thought they were vital because it was really nice to have others in your same, boat. I didn't have anybody else I knew in person that was taking the exam. And so you can really just go off of each other and say, okay, I'm struggling in this area, but somebody else might completely understand it and they can explain it to you. It's, like having free tutors in a lot of cases and just there for support. I got kind of close to some of the people and it was just really nice to be there through their whole journey and then find out if they passed and all of that. So I think it is helpful. You don't have to devote a lot of time to it.
Thank you. We have another question that says, what are your tips for getting through the education piece? What helped you manage your time for this part?
I think for me, it was just finding I think that's the easy part, right? Is being able to find a program that, again, goes to the way you feel you learn best, whether, again, that's audio, visual, whatever that is. It gives you the ability to kind of structure that your way. And so for me, I found a program that had a lot of videos that I could just go back on after I had completed the program. And they gave you the amount of time that it was still, you still had access to it at like 6 months. So I think that's important, and just find your own pace. I mean, some of us it's going to take a year, some it's going to be 9 months, but don't, like I said, like I did at the end, I tried to blaze through that first part and get in front of it. Don't do that. Stay at your own pace, go at your own pace, and run your own race. And it's very measurable and doable to pass the exam and learn the material, and then get application from it as you learn it to help your clients even before you have the CFP. So it just find a program that works best for you, and that can then lead you to success on the exam.
We have time for one or two more questions. Thank you so much for all of your insight. This is a question for all of you. Do you recommend your exam review slash study program? So if you use Dalton, Kaplan, etc., or would you have used another program?
I answer this question a lot on the boards, and I think it's if the person passes, they're pretty much going to recommend who they used. There's a lot of good ones out there. I will say for me personally, between Kaplan and Dalton, I did prefer Dalton just for my learning style. You really have to go into it and say, what is my learning style? How do I best learn? Because another one that was out there that was mentioned a lot, and I think still is Danko. And I looked at that one too. And it's just a matter of like, I knew that through Dalton, I would get the quick sheets, which were helpful. I like to have videos because I'm not always going to catch a class at the time that it's happening. And I don't personally like to be taught to the test. That's not how I learn. And so that's why I ended up picking Dalton. Of course, I was thrilled with it and would pick it again and would recommend it. But I really do believe that they are all good and they will all get you there. It's just a matter of what your study, what you prefer.
BIF worked for me because they were the review course was specifically structured over 8 weeks. So it was not like 4 days, like I know Danko does 4 days and then you kind of study by yourself. It was scheduled. There were classes, uh, different kind of classes that were live, so you could actually ask questions during that. So that was a huge help for me. And even the education program was good. I signed up for the instructor-led classes, so that would be an instructor actually talking to live instructor, not a recording.
I think it's just going to go back to, for me, again, mine no longer exists, the one I took. I think, again, find your learning style, and you can find a lot of them are going to be able to do it that way, whether it's intense reading, it's live sessions, it's group sessions, or, maybe it's just audio, you can do it that way. I couldn't necessarily recommend one over another because, again, it depends on how you study, but there's things that can help you figure out what is your best way to learn, and that's what I would recommend, because then you're playing to your strengths going into the exam.
Thank you. And we have time for one more question and then we'll wrap it up. I know you guys are so busy and I just really appreciate you taking the time for this. But someone says, what would you say to someone who is studying while working full time, planning a wedding, and about to enter a first year of marriage? Is this doable?
Absolutely, that's exactly what happened to me. So I believe fully that it is. Again, in this case, I'm going to say the family and wedding come first, because I know that that can be very stressful. But at the same time, I believe it is doable. Just, again, get connected with a mentor and find a study time that works best for you, and just make sure your family and your support group understands why you're doing it and how you're doing it. And I think you can get that support you need. And it can be hard at times, but it certainly is doable. And if there's anything, if you want to reach off channel, if there's anything I can help on that regard, please let me know. But I think it is something that you can structure around.
All right. Well, I think that is all we have time for. I cannot thank our panelists enough. I cannot thank our audience enough. We had some great questions and some great insights. As a reminder, you'll be getting a follow-up email with the link, the slides, and I'll be sending out the mentor program information. So, with that being said, thank you so much, and I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your day.